So many years ago, I read The Chronicles of Amber by Roger Zelazny, and then I've recently reread them. Zach, because I've talked about him a bunch, decided he would read them too, and he's read the first five and is ready to
Mhm.
talk about them today.
We'll do that.
Welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son get together and talk about fantasy, science fiction, and other nerdy things that we enjoy. Today, you get the two of us here in this quick take, book blast, something or
Something
other.
along those lines.
A relatively spoiler light episode. Zach's giving his reaction to having read the first five books of the Chronicles of Amber, the Corwin cycle, as we
Yeah.
should say. And I'm interested to see what he thought. This is old school fantasy now, goes way back. I already have content out on here, but let's get his perspective here today. If you enjoy this, please hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, we sure hope you will. Zach, before you jump into this, are you
Yeah.
drinking anything today?
No, my glass is empty, but I've got half a bowl of food next to me.
Hey, okay, you got to get the food in there. I am drinking something. I went and got a little bourbon, and
Ayo.
in fact, I brought the bottle.
Ooh, what you got?
Wilderness Trail bourbon.
How is it?
It's good. It's a nice sipping bourbon, small batch from Danville, Kentucky. So it can, even in the old days, call itself bourbon. So I'm just
Back when
gonna
it
sip
had
here.
to be in one state, not just, the US.
It's got a good nose too. I'm just going to sip here while you talk to us about the Chronicles of Amber.
Okay, I
What'd
will
you
need a
think?
little interaction from you here and there because I need to start by going. The Chronicles of Amber, 10 books, separated into two, 5-book cycles, right?
Yeah,
This is just the first 5 we're talking about, the Corwin cycle.
correct.
This is the 5 that you say are the better 5, right?
In my opinion, yes. But you're hoping the next five are better?
A little.
And I think you might actually enjoy the next five more than I did.
Here's my issue with these books. Most of it should have been one book. Let's start there.
Totally agree.
They're real short novel kind of books. Some of them build upon each other well. Some of them have their own self-contained things a little bit better. The first 2 really are a little wandering, and yet also things are happening but nothing's happening, and so much is happening but so little described to it, and the characters, clearly there's more to them, but they all seem so one-dimensional in so many factors. And to me, and I think I briefly alluded to this in our big celebration episode, that it is plot-driven characters. These are characters that exist for the sake of the story that is being told and do not get their own time to be characters and really enjoy them and connect with them outside of what is the main story going on here. Now that is my largest criticism of the first 2.
Okay.
It gets better.
It gets better.
It gets better in regard to most of those concerns. There's still some it's sticking to kind of the main through line of plot. You don't get side stories. It reads like it's supposed to be epic fantasy, but it only has one thing. And so in my reading of it, it's often this feels like someone tried to write YA before YA was a genre, not by making the content YA appropriate or simpler, but by cutting out the extraneous other parts of story. By being let's make this a more approachable story and boil it down to the main plot.
Now, there may be people watching this episode who have no idea what this is about. How would you describe to someone what the first 5 books of the Chronicles of Amber is about?
Apparently, all of existence is just reflections and refractions between a point of absolute order and a point of absolute chaos, and between personal interactions of a singular family that's in charge of the order side, but also might have other implications here and there. They're messing it up.
So the world that we live in Is this part of this? Is it set in
Yeah,
a
no, it's just one little side thing. We spend a little bit of time on Earth every now and then.
Okay.
Most of our time is spent in this other world or other sections. They call them shadows because they're shadows of Amber.
Okay, thus the Chronicles of Amber. Okay.
But that's where, because of it being written so small, it feels a little lacking because I don't feel like we get enough real world building to get a good feel for the vibe of Amber beyond what we directly see for the sake of plot. Like, we get told there's lots of other lords and things of Amber, and we get an occasional reference to this other story, but we interact with like two people that are not this main character's family people main important to plot. Like, two people in Amber. This is supposed to be a massive city or world, and we interact with two of them.
You do get the impression that the ruling family is really what's important about Amber, and everyone else is kind of miscellany.
I also felt like there were a couple of very big plot twist reveal things that I'm looking at it from relatively early on and going, how is our main character so dumb not to question this? Why is he not looking at this and going, duh, it's this other thing? What? The biggest one being the reveal in regards to a certain trusted friend. And
Okay.
I'm like, how did you not question any of these things that were just known or done? What?
Yeah, I know. I can agree with you on that one.
Now, that being said, I did enjoy Sign of the Unicorn, Hand of Oberon, Courts of Chaos, but that set of 3 was one story. That should have been one book. I'd be down for like a prequel book that's the first 2 kind of thing, clean it up a little bit, give some more in there to flesh out the world a little better, and then do those other 3 as another book. That still only makes it a duology, not 5 books.
Okay. Your experience with these 5 books, then, though, 5 mini books, does it encourage you to want to read the rest? Because there's 5 more mini books.
I'm going to read the rest. Mostly because I've told myself I'm investing in this, and I don't regret reading these.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, to most people, I probably don't recommend reading these either. It feels like something that was very foundational and nostalgic to you, and is kind of one of these older source of fantasy. If you read it then, you really loved it. If you really love this style, you might really enjoy going back and reading it. But if you weren't reading when these came out, if you didn't read this as a kid, if you've read other fantasy since that you like and stuff, you're not really missing out on anything too big, I think, if you don't read these. Like, it doesn't feel like it's a gap that I'm filling, that, oh, I didn't know how much I needed to read this. I didn't know how much I was missing here. I'm like, no, it's fine.
See, I read these as a teenager, and I didn't appreciate them as much as I felt I should have. So on my reread, I actually liked them more, and I understood what was going on a little better, which also I think helped me appreciate the story better. But it was the first adult level modern fantasy that I read. I mean, I'd read The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, but that's a more classic style than this, even though these are back in the 70s and 80s. But this was the first more mature style of fantasy I was reading, and yeah, I don't think I was quite ready for it yet when I did read it.
It really reads as a fun and interesting idea and take on a realm of like epic fantasy stuff that just didn't get the time and attention that it deserves, because it is a cool idea. It is good and interesting, and I almost wonder if it suffers for being written when it was, because we're kind of in an age nowadays of fantasy where the average book is like 500 pages or more.
You might have enjoyed seeing this fleshed out a lot more, is what you're saying.
And I think if it had came out in a later time, it would have been.
Okay.
But when it was written, that wasn't necessarily the style. This was written in a way to be able to still sell.
So there you go, people. Zach is saying, it's okay, but he's not necessarily recommending this. I'm on a different angle. I'm not saying it's the greatest of all time either, but I enjoy these books, and they're not long, so it's not that much of an investment. It's worth taking a look at, in my opinion, because it's something different. The exact way Amber and the shadows and the other end of the spectrum, the way that's laid out is different than I've encountered in any other books that I've read. And when something is fresh and different, even when it's that far back, that's worthwhile, in my opinion. So you can decide whether or not to check these out. And if you have already, and you have some thoughts about what Zach said here today, that's why we have a comment box. Let us know your thoughts. He won't read them, but I will, and I'll let him know what you said. Any final comments on this today, Zach?
I don't think that I should say without any sort of spoilering. So that's where we're going to leave it.
Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll talk to you next time.